changing your life one story at a time. This is the Chicken Soup for the Soul podcast with Editor-in-Chief Amy Newmark.
Hey, it's Amy Newmark with your daily dose of Chicken Soup for the Soul inspiration. It's Motivational Monday, and that means that I am going to motivate you. We're going to talk today about getting rid of stuff. It's spring cleaning time, and that means facing all that clutter in your home. You know you have it. It's everywhere. And we have a brand new book that will help you declutter your entire life. It's called Chicken Soup for the Soul, The Joy of Less. And it has already changed my life. So I'm going to talk about this whole less is more concept a lot over the next couple of weeks. But let's start with the worst example of hoarding and not getting rid of stuff. And that is storage units. You shouldn't really have one, right? So here are two stories that may cause you to rethink the whole idea of putting all that stuff in a storage unit. Our first cautionary tale is called Unit 91, and it's by Phyllis McKinley. So Phyllis had moved from Maine to Jacksonville, Florida, and she had way more stuff than would fit in her new home. So she rented 2 storage units for all the extra stuff. And finally, she got around to visiting those storage units so she could figure out what belonged in her new home. Day after day, in that oppressive Florida heat and humidity, she sorted through the mess. Each of her storage units was 360 square feet. That's like a 12 by 30 foot space. That's like 2 rooms of your house put together. She had 2 of those units, and both units were filled to the ceiling. Phyllis's mission was to sort through all that stuff. This is stuff that they could have sorted through in Maine before they moved, right? But anyway, they had moved it all, and now she had to figure out what to do with it. She spent weeks working in these units, sorting, throwing out, making a list of things she could sell. She found some things she wanted for the new place they were renting, but most of the stuff went right back into the storage units at the end of each day of heavy labor. Then Phyllis met the owner of the storage facility, and he said he would just buy the stuff she didn't want. And I think that was his experience with a lot of the people who were renting storage units from him. They would rent for a while, and then they would just say, take it away. So eventually Phyllis did sell most of the stuff that she had moved from Maine to Florida, including a lot of pieces of furniture that she had thought she couldn't live without, but then she totally realized she could live without them. Phyllis says she moved what was left into her new home, and then she continued discarding more items and donating more things to Goodwill. She ended up hardly keeping any of those things that she had spent so much money and time moving down from Maine and storing in that storage unit. She doesn't miss any of that stuff, and now she says her only regret is that she didn't leave all of that stuff back in Maine before she moved. Now, if that story isn't enough to reform you and make you give up your storage unit, here's another one from the same book, Chicken Soup for the Soul, The Joy of Less. This story is called Good Riddance, and it's by Teresa Jensen Lacey, and she tells us about her family's move from one state to another, and it was she and her husband and their kids, and the family did purge a lot of their possessions before they moved. And they actually did have to put almost everything in storage for a few months because they were moving and renting before they found their new permanent home. Teresa says that as they were putting stuff in storage in preparation for their move, they started to feel what she calls a sense of lightness. And she was already on the path to understanding that their possessions were really owning them, requiring care, cleaning, dusting. They didn't own these things. These things were owning them. So a few months later, when they got their permanent new home and they were ready to move all their stuff out of storage, the stuff they had been happily living without for a few months by then, the whole family said, almost in unison, let's give it to Goodwill. And Teresa says that was 11 years ago, and they still don't miss a single item that they gave away. So with spring cleaning upon us and moving season ahead of us, those are my cautionary tales for you. Why don't you get rid of 5 things this week and see how you like it? It really does feel great. I've been doing it all year, ever since I started working on this Joy of Less book. Tomorrow is Tip Tuesday, and tomorrow I'm going to tell you a very personal story, one that may help you recognize if someone you love is having a stroke. I'm Amy Newmark. Thank you for listening to the Chicken Soup for the Soul podcast today. And I hope you'll tell your friends and family and show them how to listen to a podcast, because most of us are new to the world of podcasts and we need a little help figuring out how to actually listen to them. And if you'd like to fight off your own hoarding tendencies and figure out how to get rid of some of that excess stuff, you can learn more about the book I mentioned, Chicken Soup for the Soul, The Joy of Less, on our website, chickensoup.com.